Hello everybody, Attack Power here with another deck building video here with first Skijager. Felt like the right time of year, right? So diving into this deck, definitely an oldie but a goodie. I think this is a vanilla division. I want to say this was one of the OG divisions. I'm not 100% sure. Go ahead and correct me in the comments if I'm wrong. But yeah, this one's been around a long time. If it's not an OG, it's like first DLC or something. It's pretty old from that perspective. It did have a couple updates several months ago, maybe a year. I can't remember exactly how long, but it did help the division out a good bit. Kind of rejiggered the card setup and things like that. So this division, it's got some play to it. It really does. It's definitely not like an A tier division or anything like that, but it's solid B tier. It gets things done. It has a nice mix of tools that you can respond to a lot of situations, but it's definitely an aggressive deck. This is not a deck. If you know me, if I'm not playing it balanced, it's really hard to play balanced. It just does not have the depth for that. A lot of the tabs just don't go very far. Your infantry run out really quickly. They don't have a lot of meat to them. They run out fast. So it's really hard to play a balanced deck with this. And I do think Vanguard or Maverick are the right way for this. I don't like Vanguard personally. I just think Maverick is a better income overall, so which is why I play at Maverick. But I would not fault anyone for playing at Vanguard. It definitely works well as a Vanguard deck as well. But if you guys enjoyed this, make sure to hit that like button, subscribe for more Steel Division 2 content, and consider checking out that Patreon down below to support the channel. Thank you to all who have or currently do support. All right, so let's dive right in here. We see a pretty chunky Recon Infantry tab. Now, the funny thing is, by today's standards, this is not like a massive... These are not like massive tabs. We're used to like Men of Steel divisions, where all the the infantry tab goes over here. It's kind of ironic, they're all the way over here. Recon tab's right next to it, but you do have an okay tank tab here, which you can fill out quite easily. Support tab, it does have a really good unit and mostly just middle units from there. AT tab has some interesting choices. The AA tab is not great, but did get a buff with the veterancy improvement to the SDK of Zed. Arty tab, some good stuff in there, and air tab actually very strong as well. So yeah, that's the quick overview. But diving in here again, these tabs are kind of almost, you have to build them a certain way because there's not enough units to fill it up any other way. You can see I have very few units left like to choose from. You don't have a ton of options in this deck. That's one thing I don't like about it, is that there's not actually a lot of choice here. You kind of just fill it up with the cards that are available, and that's it. Again, this is an older division, so back then they did not give you the number of choices a lot of the newer divisions do give you. So diving in here, we have two cards of Skijager Scharfschütze. It's a sniper unit. There's nothing special about it. The Skijager part is basically just for their camo. I mean, they look cool. I'm not gonna say that. I'm not saying they don't, but Ski Fusilier here is it's a interesting. It's a Jaeger for all intensive purposes. It's a Jaeger Fusilier, 6 MP40s, 3 G43s, an MG42, and an anti-tank grenade. This has historically now been proven to us that this unit is not super good at anything, and that's the problem. 6 MP40s is not enough CQC power to be good at CQC. 3 G43s and MG42 is not enough long range power to be good at long range. It just doesn't do anything right. It's an okay unit. It's fine. It's a nice recon squad, but don't ever think this thing is 1v1ing anything in any range. Essentially, they'll lose to all dedicated long range units. They'll lose to every dedicated CQC unit. So they essentially don't win any fights ever. It's a rough spot. B phase, more Scharfschütze, more Ski Fusiliers, and then you get this glorious card of Skijager Sturm Fusiliers, a nice big chonky 10-man shock MP44 squad with recon. This unit is pretty phenomenal. You can bring it in single vet, but notice here my entire recon tab is double vetted. You don't lose much. You have to double vet the Scharfschütze. The Ski Fusiliers, you don't lose much availability by double vetting, especially the A phase one. It goes from 4 to 3, so you definitely want to do that one. The Sturm Ski Fusilier, the Ski Fusilier Storm Fusilier, I can say this. The Skijager Sturm Fusilier, you could not vet it, I guess, if you want 3 more really bad. But you have a whole card of this unit in the infantry tab too, so either way goes. But yeah, otherwise the other options are really not even like, there's absolutely no reason to bring these. Motorcycle's terrible. This unit doesn't even have a machine gun. If it had an LMG, I could see an argument for adding it just for the sake of having another LMG around, but it doesn't, and it really is not worth having. Infantry tab. Notice I basically have no units left. You have the Skijager Pioneerfeuer, So it's between the Skijager Fear and the Pioneer Fear. The Pioneer Fear has a sniper, and that just makes it infinitely better. The MG42 is fine, but it is nothing special at all, and there's really no benefit to having essentially a Grenadier squad as a leader over a sniper squad that's still 9 men. Like, it's not like the Skijager Fear Pioneer is like a small squad. It is still pretty chunky for a leader squad, so there's absolutely no reason in my mind to take the Skijager Fear over the Pioneer Fear here. Hopping up into the actual infantry, we have 2 cards of Skijager Pioneers here, one in A and one in B. Single vetted here. I don't think I want to go all the way down to 3. It's okay. It's just okay. I mean, 20 points for a Pioneer unit is good. Let's say that. Cost efficiency wise, this unit is very solid. Actual like damage output wise, it's fine. It's not amazing. 7 MP40s. The MP40 is like one of the worst submachine guns in the game. It's not the worst. Someone posted a nice comment for me that like kind of broke it down. And the MP40 is tied for like 3rd worst or 2nd worst like thing in the game. It's not the worst, but it's not a great submachine gun. The MG42 is just like cool. This can help out a little bit at long range, but it's not like making the difference. A grenade is a grenade. A grenade for 20 points is good cost-wise. But yeah, this unit is not like incredible. It's not chopping down infantry in the woods or anything like that, so don't expect that performance out of this unit. Skijagers, the actual unit, it's a Grenadier with a Panzerfaust. It's really not exciting. Comes in a half-track. You could bring in an Opal Blitz. I'm going with the half-track here in A phase, actually, because I have plenty of other units coming in the Opal Blitz. Now, the half-track can actually be kind of useful. And since the Skijagers are only 20 points, having them come in a 5-point half-track, they're only 25 points. Still a pretty efficient unit at that point. So, yeah, I mean, there's just nothing special about this. It's 20 points for a very standard 20-point unit. Yeah, it's a teeny bit above the curve because you get a Panzerfaust, which you don't usually get that kind of AT on a 20-point unit. So, yeah. Sturm Skijager, a lovely little 9-man chonky MP44 squad with shock. They're good when they are actually able to get in range and aren't on top of a CQC squad. And the problem is it's a niche. These MP44 only units are very niche because they have to essentially be between 101 and 300 meter range to really be good, because then they do maximum damage without taking the maximum damage back. The problem is you seem to find yourself at odd ranges all the time. This game is not built around 300 meter range. This game and the maps are built around 500, 100. That's it. It's built around those 2 numbers, and 150 basically if you're in Yellow Forest. So it's not a good range. 300 meters. I really think the MP44 should be buffed to like 400 meters maybe, and I know that's already pushing it for some people. But it's just in game, it's just not a very good weapon. Yes, once it's in range, it puts out a ton of damage and chops things down. But it's just such a limited window of goodness. It's really hard to make these great. Now, kind of what you do in this deck, you just kind of spam these, and you just like flood at a certain area, and they will rapidly overwhelm infantry when they get in range. They will absolutely do that. In B phase, second card of Skijagers coming in the Opal Blitz, the other card of Skijager Pioneers, and then the second card of Sturm Skijagers here. Everything here single vetted. There is only 63. I keep doing that. 63 infantry, and your infantry aren't that expensive, so you burn through them pretty fast. So you do have to be a little bit careful there. Hop into the tank tab. The tank tab is pretty fun. Again, there's not really options here. At the end of the day, the only option here is whether you bring another card of T-34s over the Stugs, essentially. T-34 in A phase, I do think that's the best place for it. You want the faster unit in A phase to get to the front line sooner, so I do think the T-34s belong here. Still bringing an A phase card here of Stug 3s, the leader variant. 2 of these is plenty for A phase. The T-34-85s only come in A phase, and I definitely would at least 1-vet them. If you feel like you can be super duper careful with it, double vetting is viable, but you're not getting like a ton of tanks here, so it feels a little restrictive to only bring 2, which is why I got the single vet card here. I do love T-34-85s, actually. I really like this unit a lot. I think it's pretty well cost. It can take out units that cost a lot more than it. Yeah, so good unit. And B phase, just the card of Stug 3, double vetting again, because we're just trying to throw everything at our opponent. We don't need a lot of units, especially more expensive units here. We want them to be performing at maximum efficiency. So yeah, not many options here. Again, you could sub out the T-34 card, I guess, for the Stugs, but I think you want a little bit of Stug in your life, a little bit of Shuggy Woogie in your life, not just T-34 fun. Support tab. There are some good units here. There absolutely are. MG42 in an uninteresting transport. You can bring 2 cards of those. You do not need the Feldgendarmerie. I'm sorry, this is like one of the worst things I say. It's absolutely useless. There's no disheartened units here. So not sure why you would ever bring this ever at all. Just I would judge you for using this. Opal Bliss munitions, fine, have it in B. Commandant, I still want that veterancy, although arguable in this division if you really, really need it, because a lot of your infantry are already coming in with it, like the Recon's coming in with double vet and stuff, but getting these guys up to 3-star is always really nice, and since we are vetting a lot of troops and we're not going to be calling in hordes and hordes of units, generally speaking, we're calling in more higher quality units, it's possible the Commandant might actually get in. Then, of course, the highlight of the deck, a Axis division using this unit, the only time you see this Soviet unit, the Sturmpanzer KV-2. This thing is a monstrosity. It's awesome. There's absolutely no question about it. This thing is fantastic. 160 millimeters of penetration on its AP shells. The AP shell does 15 damage, so it one-shots anything in the game. It's 30% accuracy. You know what? On the ISU, that means never miss, so it must mean it never misses. HE, 7.6 damage here. 5 rounds a minute. Nice speed. I think this is the same as the ISU. I'm pretty sure. We'll go double check, but I'm almost 100% sure this is kind of like the same gun, essentially. DT machine gun, doesn't matter. Only 90 points, though, which is, what, 25 points less than an ISU already. It has a little less armor, for sure. But, yeah, phenomenal. You can bring the Grille in as well, so maybe take the Commandant out and bring the Grille in if you want more 2K fun. But, yeah, the KV-2 can, if you micro it well, can survive a long time and do a lot of damage. A lot of damage. Heading over to the anti-tank tab here, we have Panzertrucks. Nothing special there. And look at, like, again, there's no more options here. The support tab was literally the first tab that actually had some options. Like, otherwise, you just bring everything in this division. It's like a weird, again, one of the reasons I don't like is it just has no variety whatsoever. It just is. Like, it's exactly what it is. The Pak 36, really nice unit here. 30 points, comes in double vet. You still get 6 of them. They're normal shell, 65 millimeters. Comes at 20 rounds a minute, though, so it's pumping those out. Great for cleaning up light armor and stuff. The heat shell, though, wonderful. Little 750 meter range. It's just essentially a poopshin. Does 10 damage, 180 millimeters of pen. You know, hard to complain. 37% accuracy with its double vet. Great little unit. Martyr 3M, another great unit, really cost efficient, great for taking out any medium tank in the game, essentially. The APCR allows you to go after bigger tanks, but I never find it to be super efficient at doing that. It loses pretty often, but that doesn't mean you can't do it. But yeah, it's great when you can trade these up for, you know, a Panzer IV, a Sherman, T-34. You know, even a T-34 is a trade-up, right? They're 55 points as 50. That's not obviously the greatest. If you can take out like a T-30-45, that's phenomenal. But yeah, just a great, as many Martyrs are, great unit. Then we have the Panzerjäger RSO. This is a fun little unit here. Before it had no armor, so it was terrible. Now it has some front armor, which does mean it can sit around a little bit and shoot at infantry. And it's a Pak 40. It's got no APCR, but it's technically, for all intents and purposes, a 35-point Pak 40. Which is phenomenal, technically speaking. The reason I don't vet it is because the vet curd's awful. You literally lose half the availability. And these are things, if I'm using these, I'm spamming these a little bit. Calling at least 2 in at a time, 70 points. It's basically the same cost as a regular Pak 40, only 10 points more. But you're getting 2 Pak 40s for the price of 1. Now, the reason these are so cheap is because they die in one shot. They get hit, they die. It's basically an instantaneous thing. So, you know, take that as it is. Still a really nice unit to have in spammability. And then finally, an actual Pak 40 here. It's a Pak 40. There's nothing really to explain about it. One of the most like standard units in the game. Performs great. Does well. Costed effectively. I mean, it's just a great unit. Always has been. Jagdpanzer Gazelle here. Not bringing this thing because I don't really need the 45 mil. Now, 15 points for this is phenomenal. I'm not saying this is a bad unit. I just don't want it more than any of the other units I have here. But this unit is actually, for 15 points, goes 50 kilometers an hour, does have some stealth and stuff to it. It is a good unit. I'm not saying it's not. For its cost, this thing's pretty nuts. But I just don't feel like I want it over any of these things. Anti-air, again, not really many options here. It's either the SDK of Z 7.2 or the SDK of Z 10.4. And one of those is 20 mil, that's useless, and the other is a 37 mil, which is less useless. So there you go. I mean, the problem is this is a flak 36 and not a flak 43. So you're going to notice there's a pretty noticeable, like, thing is not incredible level of performance. It's fine. It's solid, especially if you have two of them. Two of them do great. One can be a little underwhelming. But yeah, I would definitely never take the 20 mil over these things. I don't even think the availability is not even good. Yeah, I guess it's okay. Yeah, I guess it's okay, but it's still not worth taking it over these. Arty tab. Options. We finally have options, guys. It's the first, like, second tab in the deck that actually has options. The support tab's not even that many options. So I'm taking the 81 mil mortar. I think mortars are great. I think they're worth taking. I'm double vetting it because I don't see me calling in more than 2, honestly. I usually call them in as a set, and I use them as a set, and that's it. I don't see me calling in 3 or 4 mortars. It just won't happen, because instead I'll just call in 150 mil. Bringing that in A to get that Arty rolling right away. You want to kind of use the advantage in income to get this out early and get lots and lots of value from it. Nice 150. I guess you could move it to B as well, but again, I just want it sooner. And a singular one of these can do a lot over the game if you are using it pretty consistently. Batterie Feu, bringing in that extra leadership, along with, of course, the artillery ability to reduce dispersion on my 150 mil artillery if I really want it for that, but probably not. And finally, the coup d'etat here, the Nebelwerfer. Lovely, lovely, lovely. Call them in pairs, folks. Pairs are the way to do it. You can do it with 1, but it's extremely unreliable as 1. Very, very reliable as 2. The other options here, Beobachter, you don't need that. Your leaders have plenty of radio on them. More mortars. The 105 is pretty bad. It's one of the worst 105s in the game, and it's all over the place. It does not fire fast at all. It doesn't have a very high caliber for how how slow it fires. Just not a very good unit. 120, nah, its fire rate to damage ratio is just worse than the 81 mil, so it's generally just not worth taking. The off-map, yes. If you don't care, you probably should be taking this. It's a very good off-map. The 172 has a lot of shells. They do a lot of damage. Only 100 points. The plane is very vulnerable, that's true, but you get 2 of them on a card right from A phase. If you're playing super competitively and you hate everybody, use the off-map. But if you're like me and you have a moral problem with it, then don't. So there you go, off-map. And then you have 2 more cards of 150s if you really want to get the Arty party going. Air tab. Options again. Yay! Now, the fighter here, we have 2 fighter options. We have the BF-109G6 and the BF-109G6R4. Now, the BF-109G6 is meh at best. It's only 30 kilometers an hour faster. It's bad resilience. It has a hard time shooting things down. Almost useless. I would never take this unit over the BF-109G6R4. Now, the special thing about the G6R4, it's actually better than the normal BF-109G4R4, which this one has 30 millimeter cannons on top of the 20 millimeter cannon. Yeah, this thing puts out the damage. Doesn't have a ton of ammo, burns through it pretty quick, but yeah, this thing can shoot down planes. That's why you only get 2 on the availability, in case you're wondering why it's 10 points more and 2 availability less than the usual BF-109 heavy fighter. It's those 30 mil cannons, and they can put out some damage. They strafe pretty well, and they can shoot things down very quickly. So a nice fighter here, a little slow, little on the slow side. So it's not like the perfect weapon of the skies, but it definitely it can do some work. It can absolutely do some work. Then we have 2 cards of JU-87 clusters. I do think it's worth bringing both cards. I think, I mean, if you really don't want to, you can bring in more ME410s, but the other options really aren't like that exciting. I guess maybe you could bring the DO-217 instead, but strafing planes are very off and on. And the other issues too, there's no recon plane here. So like the DO-217 is really not great without a recon plane. You need something to keep line of sight on the unit you're strafing. If you don't keep line of sight, then the strafer is kind of useless, and without a recon plane, it's tough to do that. So that's why I don't think the DO-217 is worth it in this deck at all. Now, another option, I guess, instead of the second cluster is a JU-87. Problem is, this JU-87 isn't even like the best loadout JU-87. Like the bomb does enough most of the time, but not all the time. That's the problem. But for 65 points, it is very cost efficient, and I would not say it's a bad choice to take these. You just have to be prepared to have them blanked about, halfway through A phase the second someone brings in an AA piece. But yeah, I just prefer the more JU-87s. I prefer to have the JU-87 so I can just kind of suicide them if I really need something dead. really bad because you have no other way to really kill super heavy tanks or, I mean, heavy tanks in general, honestly. The Pack 40s is basically your best bet. The KV2 as well, but I'm always afraid to risk those going up against a heavy tank that can definitely kill that. Then you have the ME 410. It's an okay bomber. 850 kilogram bombs is relatively reliable. It's not the absolute best loadout by any stretch, but for the most part, it'll get the kill. If it's not suppressed, it will generally get the kill on a support weapon of some sort or AT gun. Finally, we have the HE-111 here with its two 1,000 kilogram bombs. This thing is fun. It's kind of a nuke bomber. It just kind of wipes out an area. Definitely a good unit. It is expensive, though. You have to be very careful with it because it is not fast at all. Very good resilience is nice, but it is not fast in any way, and it can definitely be caught by any fighter in the game. Even the worst fighters in the game can catch this thing and potentially shoot it down. So that's first Skijager. Honestly, there's not much to building this deck because most of the tabs you're kind of locked into the choices. Like your Recon, Infantry, and Tank tab, essentially, and AA tab, essentially have no choice at all. Even the AT tab almost has no choice. I mean, I had one unit left over. And the support tab has a little bit of choice, but really not a ton. Essentially, you have the Guerrilla as your other option, or more MG42s, which, again, is not like a ton of choice. So really, your only choice comes in the Arty tab and the Air tab here. So, you know, to me, a kind of relatively boring division. From a deck builder perspective, and I like building decks. Like, I like tinkering around with decks. This division, extremely boring from that standpoint. Gameplay-wise, it is a fun deck to play. It's different. It definitely has a different flavor to it than a lot of other divisions in the game. Has a different play style to it. It needs to be aggressive. It's got some interesting units to be sure. So, fun division. Not super-duper competitive, but it can definitely get the job done in the hands of a good player. If you guys enjoyed this, hit that like button, subscribe, check out that Patreon, and make sure to go check out some more deck building videos and have a fantastic time in Steel Division 2. Thanks a bunch, and have a fantastic day.